I ended my last lecture discussing Tian and the complications of how to explain it in context to a religious concept or an idea of God. That heaven, I, I, I think the best way to look at it is I talked about the Force in the Star Wars movies. Um, that your actions that you do can tap into sort of metaphysical forces in the universe that um, are going to be more harmonious and others that'll be more disruptive. And things that you do in your life will be manifest in regards to whether or not that you are being in harmony with these forces in nature. So in other words, ethics and ideas of things that you do have cosmic implications, but not in the way of a personal God who gets angry with you. You don't have you don't have a deity who comes down and has disapproval, but you can lose the mandate of heaven, in particular a ruler, a blessing, by not being in tune with these forces. I think that's the best way to explain it. And I think it'll become more clear to you as we go later on what that would mean. So this concept they have of a dynastic cycle is interesting because they looked at a strong leader who would become an effective ruler and create an effective regime that would pass on power to heirs. But at some point, the rulers would go corrupt, taxes increase, decline in prosperity, and military disasters ensue. A new hero or a strong leader arises to claim the mandate clearly lost by the now mandate-deprived rulers. So in other words, in the beginnings of this kind of Chinese philosophy, there was this understanding of the way that regimes kind of come and go. And the idea would be is that if once a ruler inevitably becomes corrupted, that they'll lose their mandate of heaven and their rule will by default be challenged and lost. Now, this concept never justifies people to rebel against their emperor, to say, oh, he lost the mandate of heaven. How do we know if the mandate is lost? It's only known once you've actually fallen from power. So an emperor is going to crush anybody that they can that opposes them. But once they're not able to do that, then it's clear that Tian is no longer on their side, right? If that makes any sense. I'm actually going to move on. I want to talk about Confucius, Confucius or Confuci, different names in Mandarin and Chinese, but Confucius is our Master Kung, is the anglicized form. He was from around 6th century to 5th century BCE. He was raised in a minor noble family, and for years he sought a post, but he only held on to a few brief positions. He became a wandering teacher that was able to muster a large group of disciples. The influence of Confucius on Chinese society, I don't think can be overestimated. It's interesting because a few years back I watched a Chinese Communist Party official, long after the capitalist reforms that's been taking place there. And the communist official did not quote Stalin, Lenin, Karl Marx, or Mao, the founder of communism in China itself. He quoted Confucius. Confucius is so, and initially communists tried to eradicate Confucius concepts, and seems to no avail. So what do we have within Confucianism? Confucianism has an ethical system. That's what it essentially is. And you have virtues such as Ren, or humanity, compassion, benevolence, humane conduct. Then you have Li, ritual, courtesy and etiquette, how people treat one another in a very formal, very ritualized way, okay? And then you have Xiao, filial piety. This is really important to China. The devotion of a son to a father, and by extension, that which all people owe their parents, ancestors, and leaders. I'm sure you guys all might have seen the Disney cartoon Mulan. There's something to that. It's kind of a ridiculous Disney type of cartoon on one hand, but on the other hand, the idea of filial piety and acknowledging the ancestors are very crucial in China. Um, and so, if you're noticing this, Confucianism, we really can argue, is a world religion of China. But for a Westerner, this would function more as a philosophy. Okay? Um, and there's long debates about a discussion of whether Confucianism should count as a religion or not. But I think if you really look at the essential way that it develops in China, that it falls squarely in with religion, but it does have that philosophical feel. Okay, um, we have okay. So to move on from that, the Analects are his main writings, and they're recorded by his followers after his death. And along with his canon, he has several other books that come along with it. I'm just going to skip those. But I thought this was interesting, and here again we're talking about the issue of religion and a personal God and all the things that are so important to many people in the West or other religious traditions. So here's this question. So Zhang asked, is there... Well, okay, actually, I'll focus on this one first. Analects. Chi Lu asked about serving the spirits of the dead. The master said, while you are not able to serve men, how can you serve their spirits? Chi Lu added, I venture to ask about death. He was answered, while you do not know life, how can you know about death? This is very interesting because Confucius, while he saw acknowledging ancestors as being so essential to demonstrating your filial piety, he thought that going too much and delving into questions about life after death and all of that was useless. He was concerned about making life work now, the here and now. Okay, and that's something fundamental to Confucian thought. Now it's interesting. I want to go over here to Analects 1524. Notice this. Zhang asks, is there a single teaching that can be practiced to the end of one's life? Confucius replied, it is reciprocity. What you don't desire for yourself, do not desire for others. Sound familiar? What is we see from Jesus? Do unto others as you want done to yourselves. Here it's put in the negative. It's the same concept. Okay, right? So it's interesting that centuries before Jesus' writings, this very concept also comes into being, the golden rule, as we call it. Okay, out of China. So there's a book of odes. Poetry is very important to China. Poetry is very important to a lot of cultures. And so this is incorporated into there. I think I'm just going to skip that. Many know the I Ching or the I Ching, the Book of Changes. There's an oracle book, and so here we have again mysticism and oracle book. So this is kind of more the religious elements that gets fused in with Confucianism. Again, I don't want to confuse you too much with bogging you down any more than I need to. Out of the Confucian legacy, there were important Confucius thinkers of Confucius. One is Mencius. And he said that the people are the most important element in a nation. The spirits of the land and grain come next. The sovereign counts for the least. And there became debates within Confucian thinkers of whether human nature was inherently good or inherently bad. And these were the kind of debates. So Confucianism is obsessed with human nature and human actions and its relationship to the nation, to leaders and the people, okay? That's something I want you to realize. But it's also very hierarchical and somewhat rigid. The overall concept is that a big wheel should do its thing and the small wheel should do its thing. You know, if you're a janitor, you be the best janitor. Don't go beyond that. You're a janitor. Be a janitor and be awesome. If you're a king, be the best king. And if you're a woman, well, you need to make a lot of sons. It's very, very negative would be the fair word. Women are not in a very favorable position in terms of their status within the Confucian system. That has to be really made clear. I'm going to end right here and move to the next lecture.